the upcoming generation. They get the experience not only to work with local orchestras where they study normally, but in other countries too. So that we get, and for the orchestra also interesting to get award-winning young people in their sections. So this might be a win-win situation.
Welcome to another episode of Contrabass Conversations, your show covering life on the low end of the spectrum. I'm your host, Jason Heath. So glad to have you here today, and check out everything that's going on at contrabassconversations.com. And I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email, feedback@contrabassconversations.com. Let me know a little bit about yourself. Today's episode features a conversation with Florian Pertzborn, who is co-principal bass in Porto, Portugal. Florian and I are sitting outside in the beautiful Prague sunshine in October for Bass 2016, where Florian served as the chair for the BASSEUROPE Orchestral Competition. He created, this is the first year of this, the European Orchestra Experience Award. And it's a similar award to what the ISB has been doing with this orchestral competition. So Florian and I dig into all the details about why he started this and the benefits he sees it providing to the European double bass community. So much fun to chat with Florian. It was so great to have the experience of meeting all these people for the first time in Prague, and I'm so glad to bring this to you. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, D'Addario Strings. And you can hear me playing my set of D'Addario Zayek strings in the background here. I'm really liking these strings. They're great for arco. They're great for pizzicato. They've got a nice growl. They're good hybrid strings. I do a lot of both styles of playing, and I love them. D'Addario just set up a string giveaway for Contrabass Conversations listeners. And I'll have a link in the show notes for this, but you can go to contrabassconversations.com/strings. If you're in the car or you're on the treadmill or you're doing dishes or whatever, contrabassconversations.com/strings. Fill out some information. You'll be enrolled in a string giveaway, which is very cool. One of the many things that I've been talking about with them going forward with the podcast. Okay, here we go with our interview with Florian Pertzborn. Why don't you just tell folks a little bit about your background, where you grew up and the orchestra you play in and that kind of thing?
Yeah, thanks for this opportunity to speak with you, Jason. And my name is Florian Pertzborn. I'm originally from Germany, a German native. And I grew up in Germany and studied in Germany. And then my first audition I won for a new orchestra founded in Portugal, Porto.
Okay.
So
and if we have a lot of people might not, where is Porto in the country?
Porto is southern Europe, a part of Spain, if you excuse me. I mean, Portuguese people will hate me to do it, say it like that. Portugal is on the west side of Spain. Mm-hmm. And it's called the California of Europe. Yeah. Now we are back again.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So we were just talking, Florian gave this presentation of this new award, the European Orchestra Experience Award. And this is the first year that this has happened.
Yes, this is the first edition. It was an idea I had, and I proposed in a board meeting last year here in Prague. And the idea of this European Orchestra Experience Award is that prize winners win not only prize monies, but they win to play in a European orchestras for 1 or 2 weeks. So that's the basic idea.
That's great. And where are the musicians that won this year? What orchestras are they going to be playing in?
The first partners we have is, of course, my own orchestra. It's the Orchestra Sinfonica do Porto, Casa da Música, the concert house orchestra in Porto, and the Dresdner Philharmonie in Dresden, Germany. These are the two partners for this edition, and we are aim to create a network of more European orchestras for every edition of this concours.
It's a great idea. And what inspired you to start this program? What got you going with this idea?
It inspired me the idea of working in different countries and not only for professionals, but also for the upcoming generation, so that they are in the phase where they really are going to get a job. They get the experience not only to work with local orchestras where they study normally, but in other countries too. So that we get, and it's for the orchestra also interesting to get award-winning young people in their sections. So this might be a win-win situation.
Yeah, it's definitely a win-win. And it's we were just talking about there. Everybody appreciates a cash prize, of course, but an experience prize like that, the chance to actually go into an orchestra is such a incredibly valuable experience for a young person.
I think money is always important and never enough, of course, but the experience, I think, is priceless. And we are doing now the first edition, and it was quite easy to organize because I had immediately many partners, and we see how it goes now. We have very talented prize winners, and they were very happy to win this prize.
Do you remember who the prize winners were?
Yes, the first prize winner was Luzia Vieira. She's a Portuguese student, but this is a coincidence because she studied in Lisbon and then she went to Germany to study her post-graduation, I think, and then now she's an academist of the Hamburg NDR. So she has a big experience already, and now she won the first prize in the orchestra, in this year's orchestra competition, and she got a week for the Dresden Philharmonie and Orchestra Sinfonica do Porto. So that's a very experienced career she will get with this career path.
For me, as someone from the United States, we have some differences in our orchestra, but you look at the size of the U.S. and you look at the size of Europe, and the differences between orchestras must be just enormous in terms of style and type of playing. It's got to be such a great experience for a young person to go, especially if they're from a different region, to get a chance to sit in.
That's a very good point, because in Europe you have a big tradition. Like Prague, we are here now this year, has an enormous tradition of bass playing, and also the orchestras have an own tradition. And it's very hard for a student to get in a certain tradition. Yeah. They get mostly jobs or places in academies in their town where they study. And it's not that easy to get a invitation to play with another orchestra like Prague or like any other country. So this might be a open up experience, just to open door for 1 week for highly skilled and gifted and talented student to play in an orchestra they probably never would get the chance to play. Yeah. This is the idea, to open up cultural frontiers and to give a chance for really talented people to go.
Yeah. Tell us just a couple details about your orchestra. I'm sure people would be fascinated to know what life in a Portuguese orchestra is like.
We are an international orchestra, like every other orchestra in Europe too. That means if I compare to German orchestras, there are many nationalities working together, like Berlin Philharmonic, or if you watch any orchestras, they are international already. So the best players are hired. You don't look at nationalities. Yeah. So our orchestra in Casa da Música or Concert House Orchestra, we have 15 nationalities, and one of them is almost half Portuguese, but then we have Brazilians, we have all European countries, and also from the United States, Brazil, and it's quite international orchestra.
How many bass players are in the section?
We have normally we have 8. And at this moment we have 7, but we have a section of 8 players.
Okay. And Europeans will probably identify with this, but just for the American audience, what's a year like in your orchestra in terms of time off, and just what does the schedule look like?
We have a season which starts normally in September, and we go right straight until July, end of July. So it's a long season.
Very busy, yeah.
And we have one program a week, normally 1 or 2 concerts. And we have different kind of concerts. We have also family concerts. We have sometimes we play film music, mainly a symphonic program, all kind of styles.
Yeah.
And in Casa da Música, we have 3 ensembles. We have not only symphony orchestra, which I play in, but we also have a contemporary music ensemble called Remix Ensemble. Then we have a Baroque orchestra. They are specialized in Baroque ensemble, and we have a choir.
What's the conservatory situation like in your town? What's life like for a student there?
We have mainly 3 systems about music education. There's one, the conservatoire system is kind of in the middle, it's a secondary education system. Then we have the university level, which is Superior School of Music or university or polytechnic system. And then we have a professional school education. That means the kids come and they have lessons, normal lessons, and they learn instruments. And they start with the age of 9 to have this the first. And they can learn instruments within the school system. So it's quite well placed, the music education now in Portugal.
Okay, interesting. So they have that third system where they can come.
Yeah, and you in the superior school system you have the undergraduate, then you have the master's and the doctorate level now in different areas like music education or performance.
Well, I love hearing how international your orchestra is. That's remarkable. If someone outside of Portugal wants to come audition, is the audition sufficient to allow them to work in the country? I know that's always an issue.
Yes, the audition is open for everybody.
Yeah, okay.
Everybody can apply, and for some places, of course, there will be a pre-selection about the CVs or about recordings, but mainly the main auditions are open for everybody, regardless of nationality or what else. And of course, it has to be according European law that you have a working permission to work with us. This is the only thing you have to fulfill. Yeah. And of course, you have to win the audition.
Sure, of course. Yeah, there's that. There's that too.
Issue. Yes.
Well, I'm just loving this Bass 2016. This is such a cool event.
Yeah.
It's really fun to come and hang out in Prague for a week. I feel so fortunate.
It's a big pleasure to be in Prague and to meet you and to have the opportunity to talk a bit.
Yeah.
It's a high diversity of things going on here, and it's really interesting to meet so many people and so many interesting styles and ways to play the bass.
Yeah.
It's a real pleasure.
Yeah. Well, thanks for talking.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for listening.
Florian, so great to catch up with you. And folks, check out Florian's website and everything he's got going on in the show notes for this episode. So some news to share here. I went down to Los Angeles. I live in San Francisco now, and I have so many people that I've wanted to connect with in the LA area that I've wanted to feature on the podcast and just wanted to hang out with and chat with. And I realized, okay, I live 6 hours drive or an easy plane ride from Los Angeles. Why don't I just take a few days and go down and interview people in person? Because it's so much better to talk to people in person. Like Florian and I today talking in person. Petya, last episode, talking in person. That's what it's all about. I love talking on Skype. I love talking on the phone. That's all fine, but there's nothing like connecting in person. So I took a few days and went down to LA. Drove down to LA, which is a very dull drive if you go the fast way. It's a beautiful but very long drive if you go the pretty way along the coast. I went the boring way. Got to LA. I got to reconnect and do a round 2 with David Allen Moore. And I was so happy that we were able to schedule this and do it. And it's epically good. You will just love this episode. It's coming soon. We dug into, I don't even know where to start. So David and I talked. I got together with Brandino. If you know Brandino, he's won, I think, like 7 Grammys. He's played on Outkast, that famous Outkast album from 2004. He's up for another Grammy this year. He and I were sitting out in the sun, chatting about life, the music industry, recording, all things bass. That's how I started my LA trip. hung out with Fernando de la Fuente, who is the bassbox.com, the creator of that, and an old colleague and friend from DePaul in Chicago. I sat down and interviewed Chris Hanulik, principal bass of Los Angeles Philharmonic, LA Phil. Great interview, such a cool guy. My first chance actually getting to meet Chris. And I spent a couple days, Peter Lloyd, who teaches at the Colburn Conservatory, we hung out and he was kind enough to put me up in LA, and great time. I'm so thankful that I have the flexibility to do trips like this, and I'm hoping to do a lot more trips like this. And if you're interested in me coming to where you're at, I'm very open-minded about scheduling something to make that work. I am planning right now, this is still tentative, it's November as I'm recording this, but my plan is to drive out to Ithaca from San Francisco, California, to Ithaca, New York for ISB. If you look at a map, that covers a lot of the country. I'm getting a few things lined up along the way, but I would love to organize some meetups to stop and do some things at some different schools. And so if you are in session still in late May and you're pretty much anywhere in the United States, let me know, because what I would like to do is try to connect San Francisco to Ithaca with some stops along the way. That's one of the things that, having not the 60-hour-a-week full-time job that I had the past 7 years, I have the flexibility to do that sort of thing. Of course, I have to make some money here doing this thing, or I can't keep doing this podcast. So I put out Winning the Audition, which has been doing really well. There are lots of other ways you can support this effort and support things like that trip to Los Angeles, like the trip to Prague. It's all at contrabassconversations.com/support. There are a lot of ways you can support this podcast and what I'm doing here and what I'm building, both financially and non-financially. And there are a lot of options there. contrabassconversations.com/support. Check it out. Well, in addition to book launch week, last week, I was on two podcasts, which is crazy. I did them weeks before. Well, one of them I did weeks before. One of them actually did last week, but they both came out the exact same time my book launch came out. So all of a sudden, I was all over the place, which is cool, and I hope I don't overload you on social media if you're following along. But Tracy Friedlander's new podcast, Crushing Classical. She featured me. I think I was guest number 5. I know Tracy from the Civic Orchestra of Chicago. She and I played in the late 90s under Daniel Barenboim, did all sorts of cool rep. That was a great time. I can't believe it was almost 20 years ago at this point. But Tracy had a podcast going. I was one of her early guests. Thank you, Tracy. And it's a great podcast. I really like what she's doing. And check it out. There's a link in the show notes. I was also a guest on James Newcomb's Trumpet Dynamics podcast. Now, James is starting a new podcast called Musicpreneur. That's launching January 1st, 2017, which is incidentally the 10-year anniversary of Contrabass Conversations, which is kind of a funny coincidence. James and I did one of these conversations I love, which is we just got on Skype. We both turned our recorders on and we just yacked all things music, podcasting, business, entrepreneurship. It's one of these deep dives. It's super geeky. If you're into the back end of how I do this and what I'm doing going forward and what some other musicians are doing like James, you'll love this talk. It's not about bass at all, but it's about tech. It's about making a living in music. It's about why a podcast. It's about James's personal journey, which is fascinating. He's been working with some very big names in the podcasting world to get his thing going. So that'll come pretty soon, probably early December. Oh, Emily Marlowe wrote in. And Emily's a violinist in the DC area. I believe she plays in one of the Army groups out there. But I knew her when she was a violinist freelancing in Chicago. We played some gigs together. And she was listening to Tracy Friedlander's Crushing Classical podcast, the one with the episode that I'm on. And she heard my exploding car story, which you've heard, I'm sure, if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time. Or I don't think it comes up first if you type car explosion in Google. There was a period of time when it was up there, but if you type Jason Heath car explosion into Google, you'll certainly find it if you haven't read it. So Emily wrote in, and I was coming home from the Northwest Indiana Symphony in beautiful Northwest Indiana. Actually, Northwest Indiana is okay, but if you ever have driven through that part of the country, it looks like some sort of dystopian future world with fire belching out of smokestacks and that kind of thing. Well, Tracy asks everybody on her show to relate kind of a low point, like the moment in their life when they just said, this is ridiculous. And the car explosion was mine because it's a good story. And well, there was that moment. Emily also had that exact same moment playing Northwest Indiana Symphony. I don't think it was because of the Northwest Indiana Symphony, poor Northwest Indiana Symphony, but she was driving through snowy December snowstorm kind of nightmare to get to Northwest Indiana. She was pregnant and she was skidding all over the interstate, just seeing accident after accident, and just sort of realized, I'm doing this for how much money? $60? Something like that. And so, yes, we've both been there, both with the Northwest Indiana Symphony. Not that there aren't lots of other gigs that you could have that experience with. And last for today, and again, much more listener feedback to share, but I'm just putting on a little bit at a time here. Richard Benoit wrote in from Quebec to say hi and was wondering if he could get on my double bass luthier directory and actually be the first Canadian workshop on my list, which of course you can, Richard. And if anybody out there is listening and is a luthier and you want to be listed somewhere else, I know you're probably listed on the ISB site and some other places, but I will happily include you on my luthier list. It's at doublebassblog.org, and I'll put a link in the show notes, and all you have to do is send me an email, feedback@contrabassconversations.com. Say, add me to your luthier directory. I also have a teacher directory if you want to go on there as well. Well, that's going to do it. Thank you so much for listening. So glad to have you along for another episode of Contrabass Conversations, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.